So, yo, Brian, what did you think of the ending?
Oh, I thought this show ended the only way this show was going to end, which is has never adhered to the rules around needing to have a blockbuster giant battle in space or some one-on-one mano-a-mano showdown between Cassian and Andor and some nemesis. It's never what this show has been about. The show has been about, building a world and bringing us into it and telling a story that is really connective tissue to the original Star Wars that we all know, or in this case the prequel to the Star Wars that we all know. So I thought the finale was really fitting. I thought it was incredibly tense and dramatic at points, and I had a chance to listen to a couple of interviews with Tony Gilroy afterwards, where he talked about the 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 two, let's call it the two pieces to the ending, because I think there's two pieces to the ending. There's the ending that takes you right into Rogue One, and then there's his equivalent of a credit scene, which is kind of the last scene of the show. So he said basically the walk to the ship was kind of always the ending from the very beginning. Like even before they started the first episode of the series, he said, like, if you asked me or my brother or Bo Willimon, he's like, what would be the thing we're trying to get to in the final episode? He's like, it's Cassian Andor walking to the ship that will take him to the Ring of Kafrene where you meet him in Rogue One. He's like, that pretty much is going to be what we get to. And he's like, what you're going to see during the walk is a montage, as he joked, about all the actors were able to pay to be in the show and take part in the story, and that connects kind of characters that we've met along the way. He's like, I would have told you from the very beginning that's what we were going to end with.
Yeah.
But then he got asked about the actual last scene of the show, which is a little more unexpected. And we'd start the spoilers or whatever, but that's of course Bix holding Cassian Andor's son, which has not been talked about at all. And he said, as we have said throughout Rogue One and this show, he said rebellions are built on hope. And so he said, my last image of the show, I always wanted to be about hope. And so in his mind, he's like, when you see Bix alive with the child, he's like, that is hope for the future. And then he kind of joked, whether Disney wants to do anything with that future someday is up to them. He said, so I gave them that. But in the end, my story was about hope because we were leading into what it's called, Star Wars: A New Hope, right? So even those little connective things he's thinking about in terms of placement. So for this particular show, that ending was perfect.
Yeah. And I was editing the show that we did prior to this one, which I must admit I wasn't all there. I'll explain later. But we had a conversation about Bix and whether she lives or dies. And I think I had said that I hope that she's still around and that she's out there somewhere, and boom. And whether Disney takes that, I guess, assist from Tony Gilroy to do something with that, it'll be interesting. But it does set a precedent for the future installments of Star Wars if they want to go a route that I would say is the adult Star Wars, the Star Wars that tell stories that are not necessarily for kids, because I've read statements and heard people say certain things about the show that is not for them, and it's like, whatever, man. This is not for you. It's fine if it's not for you, but don't call it, this is not Star Wars. This is Star Wars, my friend. I said in the previous show, they elevated even the pews, man. They elevated everything about what Star Wars is. I would love to see a Star Wars now where the Jedi are involved, and it's not this Dave Filoni, George Lucas sort of visuals that are, I'm sorry, but kind of childish in a way. And it's not to disrespect anyone who loves those movies, because I love the first installments of the Star Wars New Hope. I said previously the third uh movie of the prequel, Revenge of the Sith, I believe is, of Return, whatever. I didn't like the trilogy afterwards with Return of the Jedi. I don't know. Some of it was okay and all that, but it wasn't this. It wasn't this, Brian.
Mhm.
And Star Wars, I think, and what Tony Gilroy did with this is elevated it to a point where uh anything less than this, Brian, I don't know if I would be as interested in it as I am now, and how this story was told, and how all the elements, man. I'm telling you, if Skarsgård doesn't get an Emmy for his performance here, man, I don't know what to say about. But this show deserves all the accolades, all the praise, anything positive, because this show was excellent.
I think so. My conception of Star Wars is that you need both. Uh,
Okay.
I don't think. I think this show needs the Force and the Jedi
Yes,
as a
absolutely.
counterpoint. So
Yes.
this show doesn't need it inside this show, but we need to have a similarly quality show that has that, or
Yes.
movies that have that, because that, like the Force itself, creates balance for the
Yes.
franchise. That's sort of I think, kind of the beauty of this is that, to your point about the Andor and his son, is that this is the template for how you get away from the Skywalkers. Because yes, Palpatine is referenced. Like Vader, we know, is in Rogue One. Leia, we know, is in Rogue One. There's reference. Her dad is in this show. Gilroy said there was a version of this where there was a Leia cameo,
Yeah.
and they took it out, which I think was the absolute right move for this show. But like, where this is heading, what this connects to, but this is the definition of a true successful spinoff, right?
Yeah.
It can stand on its own. It complements that main family storyline that you know and love, but it gives you new directions and new characters that you could follow. I mean, before Rogue One was made, right? Cassian Andor didn't exist as far as I know, and certainly not to anyone in the mainstream. The fact that we're sitting here looking at a final scene that has his son, and who knows what'll happen with it, but the fact that it's a credible discussion to say, like, I'd be interested to follow the Andor family in the Star Wars universe, like, that is a testament to the creators that they brought this individual in and elevated the character to where you're like, I was thinking about this the other day, because this show is not for kids, and maybe we can go back to this later in the show, but it's like, if you were introducing a teenager or an adult to Star Wars, where would you start?
I would start with this.
So that's my question. Has this show and Rogue One become so essential to your understanding of the main Skywalker saga that instead of starting them with New Hope, just to say, like, hey, this was 1977, this is where the phenomenon began, this is where Lucas created, would you actually start it with Andor and Rogue One to be like, you need to understand how Rebellion began, and then I'm going to show you the guy who created this whole thing, what he took with, and like, I wonder, the fact that that's even a conversation, given that Star Wars, the original movie, is the cultural phenomenon that it is says all you need to know about how good a show Andor is.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a show that I watch over and over and over again, just to get the little pieces, because again, this is very rich in dialogue, and a lot of situations are happening. My wife had to watch Emergency Awesome just to sort of understand sort of the things that are happening, and the things, and the characters that are involved in this. Let's get to some of the things that happen in the show. And this, what happened to Deidre?
I want to start there. Okay.
what happened to the dude that offed himself because he
Partagas.
realized, yes,
Major Partagas. That was awesome.
listen, what did Darth Vader do to the people that failed him? Come on, man. There is no, there is no pat on the back. Hey, we'll get him next. No, 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 no. You failed is a wrap for you.
My favorite is the guy in Empire where it's Captain Piet, where he says he's like, I will apologize to Lord Vader and I'll take this, and then apology accepted.
Apologies accepting,
Captain
Captain
Nita.
Nita.
That's the scene you should play. Everyone, like when you're looking at Partagas, that should be in the background. Like
They know what's coming. There's no room for failure. Are you kidding me?
No.
And there's this dude. I want Star Wars theory. I used to watch him a lot, but he doesn't like Andor. He said he was going to stop covering. Go ahead, fine, don't cover it. Stay in that world, whatever it is, that world that you like. But he said in a there was a panel of other influencers or YouTubers talking about Andor, and he said that the Empire wouldn't stand for some of the things that they were doing in the show. Are you kidding me? Do you think there is one sense of, listen, the Empire is evil, pure evil. There is no, is what we want, and we'll get what we want no matter what. Gorman already tells you that. So for him to say that, and then they roasted him for that. He stood there quiet, taking it, because how do you say that? How do, like that dude said, how do you form the words to say something like that?
But I think so. If you want to start with the Deidre and the Partagas side of this, and I, we have to link this back to Cyril Karn, obviously dying in the middle of the season. I think this show, one of its achievements is the individualization of the Empire. So if you think about Star Wars in all of in all of the movies, and I totally understand why Lucas did this because it's time. You get 2 hours of movie, basically.
Yeah.
The Empire is not made up of individuals. It's basically two individuals and everyone else, right? It's the Emperor, who's the puppet master, who you don't even meet in person until the final movie or Return of the Jedi, you know what I mean? Final movie, and then the prequels. And then it's Darth Vader, who's kind of a walking twist because you don't like you're introduced to him as the big bad, right? In New Hope, right? He comes in dramatically. But like by the time you get to the end of Return of the Jedi, you kind of realize like, and then you see the prequels, you're like, wait, he actually was the protagonist, kind of. It's more his story than like, it's his children that right? It's like you're living the story of him, his children. So weirdly, like, he's kind of both, he winds up being both hero and villain. So then you're left with, the Captain Piets, right? The Admiral Moff or Governor Tarkin, like, yeah, they're individual actors, but they don't really have stories. They play
taking orders.
Yeah, they check the boxes of what you expect the bad guys to do. Stormtroopers, clone troopers. There's no view of their mindset. And similar to the question of how a rebellion begins, there's kind of a question here of how does an empire work? And I think that's what Deidre and Partagas really symbolize, is that, yeah, if you have a galaxy-wide oppressive government, you're going to have people with agendas within that.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have people with ambitions. It's one of the reasons I love Krennic, right? Krennic is a guy with ambition, and like Deidre is a woman with ambition. Like, these people, the reason why they have their own thing is because they're like, I want a chair next to the Emperor.
I want to see that table.
Like, even that guy in New Hope who basically challenges Vader, who he then kind of force chokes, where he's like, your sad devotion to that ancient religion. He's basically like spitting on him. He's like, who the hell are you?
Yeah.
Emperor's right-hand man. This show gets at that in a way that I think makes those characters, like, if not MVPs, they're indispensable. And so I think, like, Deidre's like, she gets the scene that I always wanted. Like the mano a mano showdown of this show is not Cassian against anyone. It's Luthen against Deidre in the shop. That's it.
Yeah.
Like that's the throne room. There's the
Yeah.
two of
Yeah.
them who have kind of been on both sides of this indirectly, finally coming face to face and knowing exactly the moment. And then you realize when Deidre winds up in the cell block, she's undone by her own ambition. That's it. Like it's not that she was a bad soldier. She actually wasn't. She was a really good Imperial soldier, but she's undone by her own kind of relentless crusade. Like it can't be the Empire that catches Luthen. I have to catch him.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
winds up being her undoing. And that leads to, and by the way, in the Partagas scene, this is why this show is brilliant. You know what he was listening to? Did you pick up on that?
Yes.
That is one of the like greatest callbacks that they draw no attention to. I had to listen to it a couple of times and I was like, isn't that? And then I Googled it to be sure. It is the Nemec Manifesto from season 1, which we said at the time was like, we would actually follow a show that was nothing but this manifesto. This dude is listening to it before he kills himself.
And he could. It's spreading all over the galaxy. But it says this to me. Anyone who has ambition is setting themselves up for failure because the only order is the one given by Palpatine and Lord Vader. That's it.
Well, it shows you ambition within the Empire is rebellion of its own sort and therefore must be put down.
Very simply. And it's, oh man. Do they have them? It would be dope to like listen to that manifesto in its completion.
But the fact the show remembers the importance of that because it was such an inspirational text to Cassian at the end of season 1, right? Him listening to that is actually one of the reasons that you're led to believe he kind of buys in.
Mm-hmm.
And so then here you're hearing it blasted kind of publicly to where someone on the Empire is kind of buying in, right? Buying into the idea of like, we failed to quell this thing, before it started. And therefore he's like, all right, now I got to own up to the side game that I was running. And as you said, I'd much rather blast myself than be force choked.
What was the side game he was running?
Well, if you remember, like he and Deidre from the very beginning had been on this hunt for Luthen.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of was intimating he wasn't passing along all of the intel she was providing to the higher ups. Like it was kind of like we're going to play this cat and mouse game with this fledgling rebellion. We're actually going to remember that when they were talking about Gorman, they were actually kind of allowing the rebellion to take, they actually wanted a little bit of rebellion so they would then have the excuse to squash it. So they kind of were like feeding, remember, they were kind of feeding them. So the kind of thing that like if Vader or Palpatine got wind of that, they'd be like, no, you guys are traitors, right? And they're like, no, we actually want a little bit of rebellion here because that'll give us the excuse to deliver the Gorman massacre. But that was being done, at least we were led to believe, outside of the normal channel.
And what it did, it fueled it, the rebellion.
So, right. So once it backfired and became, as Luthen said, if it goes up in flames, it will burn brightly. When it became that, they lost control. And that's why he's realizing, like, this will trace back to me because I will be the one who authorized this side op that led to this. And I'm toast. That's kind of what he's... Because there's also that scene with him and Krennic where you kind of, this show again does a really good job of the what's left unsaid, and you can kind of fill in the blank yourself. Like they have history, and you can kind of tell like they've known each other for a long time. They don't really like each other, but they tolerate each other. They kind of respect each other grudgingly. And in this particular case, you kind of get the sense Partagas is like, okay, Krennic got over on me. Like his Death Star is going to be the thing that rises, and my thing is not really going to turn out. Like you just get that feel, like they have that understanding, and that it all sort of fits perfectly for for these villains. So
I would watch a show with Dedra.
So Denise Goff is a really interesting, like, there's a couple of these actors and actresses where I'm just fascinated to see what they get to do after this show, because she obviously primarily a stage actor before this, really had no, not much TV or film experience. This part is really memorable. It does have risk. You could get typecast as like you're just always the villainous,
Yeah.
cold character. But I mean, she's a great actress, and I would love. There's actually a funny. She's doing press circuit where they're doing all these funny gimmicks with the cast. There's an interview of her and Kyle Solar where she's using her regular voice and just kind of laughing and joking, and then something comes up about what is it, the Star Path unit, the thing that she's got in the box. What's in the box? Thing that she's got in the box that she brings to Luthen, and she flips the switch in the interview and goes into character, and it's amazing. Like the voice
Yeah.
goes from like her normal voice to like Imperial Star Path. It's incredible. It's like, so you're just like, I want to see what this woman does and what Hollywood does with her. But yeah, one of the, I don't know if she's quite the MVP of the show, but again, she's one of those, like, this show could not have won a championship without her.
Yeah. What other I mean, one scene that I remember well is the dude that is feeding information to Luthen. And
Lonnie?
I didn't think, yeah, and I didn't think he was gonna. In retrospect, I'm like, yeah, I understand why Luthen did what he did,
No,
but
I knew. So what's
you
the
knew he was
moment?
gonna have.
The minute he uttered the word Yavin, I said he's gonna kill this guy. Because
Ah,
there ain't no way Luthen Rail would tell that guy where the base was and just walk away. No
true
chance.
that.
The second
Yeah,
he said that
yeah.
word, I was like, uh-oh. I was like, what's he gonna do to this guy? Is it gonna be
Did,
him or is
did
Val gonna
Lonnie
kill him?
sold him out? Lonnie sold him out because he had to.
No, Lonnie didn't sell him out. Lonnie was a good soldier.
Okay.
So what Lonnie was saying was that he broke in, so he went beyond the mission because he got wind of the Death Star. Like something else was going on. And he broke into Deidre's like personal files, which was not something that he was asked to do. And so what he was
He
saying
got
was
curious.
basically like, the fact that I did that means there will be a trail that leads to me, and there's only so long before they find me. He's like,
So,
his point is, but what I found was worth it.
yeah.
And that's what he's passing. And that's why you see, it's one of the few times you see Luthen truly surprised and kind of off his game, where he's like, what? He's like, because even he didn't know the energy project, what it was actually leading to. So that's, Lonnie did not, I mean, because you see Lonnie with Clea in the museum, like he's like a really good turncoat for the rebellion. He's a really good, traitor. Can we talk about episode 10, which is the Luthen's death, but his backstory with Clea? This is one
Was
of my,
it 10 or 11?
I think it's 10.
Okay.
Because 11 is 11 is Clea's hold up in the Luthen's apartment, and they're
Okay.
they're
Yes.
chasing her down, and then 12 starts with the battle. We talk a lot on this show about editing and how, like, a lot of times with Marvel in particular, we kind of wind up seeing things where we're like, man, if we could have just moved stuff around, you would feel a little differently about the product. This is why we talk about that.
Yeah.
Because you're in the final 3 episodes of this show. They could have put the Luthen backstory with Clea anywhere in the show. And it's so bold to put it
Towards
as
the
he's
end.
about to die.
Yeah.
They finally pull the curtain back on this guy. They finally are like, we've held this for 20 episodes. Now we're going to tell you this
Who
guy
he
that's been
was.
ruthlessly pulling the strings the whole time, how he got to this point. And actually, the relationship that meant the most, that actually was the backbone of this entire thing, is this girl who, in very beautiful circular drama, is the one who has to then see him off. it works amazingly well, and I just think so few shows or movies would have even attempted
Mhm.
to do this in that moment. But it's like it fills in the blanks. The scenes with them on wherever, what was it, Naboo, whatever planet they're on, where they execute the detonation, is unreal,
Mhm,
like
mhm,
unreal. The kid opposite him at the table with the detonator, and then him
mhm,
explaining like basically what's to come, and then that's the parallels to her having to do that. So here's my like. I didn't realize this till after the show was over. So I'm giving so Elizabeth Dulau is Clea, and Clea in season 2 is probably the character who gets the biggest leap from season 1.
mhm.
First acting role
Oh,
ever.
wow.
Straight from acting school to
Wow.
this show. That is a performance.
That is rookie of the year right there.
That's what I'm saying. Because you would watch her performance in this season and be like, "Oh,
She's been doing
she
it for a
she
minute.
must have been a child actor." But no, first job in acting, and she delivers that and has that kind of closure moment. And I would argue she probably has the best action set piece of the final 3 episodes. Her infiltration of the hospital is in a I thought, you know what it reminded me of a little bit? That reminded me of Terminator 2. That hospital, the way it was set up, reminded me a little bit of how they set up the Pescadero Mental Hospital, where like you
Mhm,
could
mhm.
see like around, like how they're
Yeah,
moving around.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. But
yeah.
I absolutely loved that. I thought that was brilliant. But I couldn't believe that when I read it. I was like, she had never acted in a show or anything before she did this.
Yeah, I like that scene. I like how it was going down. And you get both perspectives of how they're trying to figure out who did this, and they're looking at this. Who looks at the like in movies? Who looks? I mean, the details, Brian, in this matter, and it's a shame that it's over. But hopefully, the people like Dave Filoni, people like John Favreau, look at this not necessarily as we keep doing this, but like like I would quote Andor, make it worth it.
Yeah, it is a great quote.
Make it worth it. Yeah.
And then he says he made it worth it. Um, Cassian's final episodes are pretty interesting in the sense of again he's not as featured, right? Because it's like episode 10 is really all a Luthen Clea episode. Um, even in episode 11, he kind of shows up more toward the end in terms of getting to Clea, and then he kind of has his final battle. Which, and in weird case, that battle to me more showcased why he trusts K2SO. Like that, I think the point of that is to show like why he kind of relies on this droid the way that he does, because that guy because the droid effectively breaks protocol and goes in and saves them in a
Yeah.
very sort of Terminator type sequence. But like that, I think that's meant to show you like why does this lone gunman type of soldier rely so heavily and have the relationship he does in Rogue One with K2SO. I think that's what you're seeing in that scene. But I actually think the speech that matters for him is the one at Yavin, where he's yelling at Bail, Mon Mothma, and the other representatives of the Alliance who are basically doubting Luthen. And he finds himself actually, after all of his back and forth with Luthen, he finds himself finally
Yep.
being like, you can't walk on this man's grave after what he's done to get you here.
Because effectively none of those people in that room knew him. He's perhaps just a voice, except for Mon Mothma, whom uh interacted with him very sparingly, but she even had her doubts
Mhm.
with him, and perhaps still did even after his demise. And Andor is like he's been in it with him for a while already, and the intel that he has, although unbelievable to them, is like, yeah, Luthen has lied and done whatever he had to do, but why would he tell me this stay there knowing what was going to happen. Why is it a cruel joke? What are you trying to do here? You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? We can't sleep on this. So it definitely, see, it's those little things, man. It's those little things. Like, had it worked, if it would have worked out there, oh yeah, they believe him and then whatever, right? But they put that moment of that doubt, that friction between Andor and them, that sort of, and it played out well for the story, and uh I lost my train of thought, sorry. But it was Mon Mothma who went to Clea, right? Clea, are they related? Not
Related
Clea, not Clea.
to Val.
Val, yes. They related? The cousins or something like that?
Cousins, yeah.
Yes. She goes to her and tells her, "You'll go find out if you believe him or not." You know?
Well, she says, "I want to believe him. Help me believe him." Basically, is what she said. But the thing that Cassian says in the room that I think changes the tenor of the conversation is, again, way the show links pieces. It's his, as I said, it's my opinion, his career peak, which is his rescue of Mon Mothma in episode 9,
Mm-hmm.
which at the time, if you remember, they basically said, "We're not going to say that you did this. Like, this is the definition of, like, I was never here," right? The spook that was never here. They even say, like, this will not be in the record. This will not be in the log that you went to Coruscant to get her back. But the point is, Mon Mothma knows he did it. And Bail Organa knows he did it because Bail had his own rescue team. Remember that he says, like, gets scratched.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And he's like, I just know I don't know who's coming to save you, but there's this guy who I'm told is the guy is going to come. So when he says, Cassian finally reveals that classified intel of, like, no, I broke you out. And Luthen is the guy that basically sent me to get you. You see the look on Benjamin Bratt's face where he's like, oh. And it's like those little pieces come together to where it's like, now the door is open
Mm-hmm,
for
mm-hmm.
belief, which then
Yeah.
leads to, yeah, them going on the mission and leads to Rogue One and everything that follows after. So, but that Mon thing is important too, because you get the sense of, like, of all the people at the table, that's kind of what's putting her on the path to being the leader of the rebellion. That little exchange where she's like, help me believe him,
Mm-hmm.
is kind of what separates her from the woman who's basically shouting down Luthen at the table. And
Yeah.
even Bale, who's kind of like indifferent.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
there being like, I feel it. Like, I get it. Like, I know, I can feel instinctively where I'm supposed to go with this. And that, I think, is to let us know where she's going to wind up going, in the years that we don't see her until Return of the Jedi. So, like, yeah, really, really cool. That's sort of like his big monologue and sort of speech, but very cool. So,
What do you think of Benjamin Bratt's performance?
I like it. Like I said, I told you, I think he's better than Smits in the role, but I don't think it's totally fair to Smits because this is a much better written part, even in a small
Mm-hmm.
capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the reason I think he's better in the role is because if I contrast even Jimmy Smits's part in the Obi-Wan series, where we see him parenting Leia, baby Leia, a little bit, Bratt to me is more believable as the father of what Leia becomes than the way Smits is asked to play it. Smits is he's got a little playful side in the Obi-Wan series, but Lucas writes him so wooden
Mm-hmm.
that all of his other lines are just so deadpan that it's kind of like, really? Like, this firebrand, unquenchable spirit of a princess was raised by this dude? Whereas
Yeah.
you see Bratt, like, Bratt's got some real flair. Like, he's got
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
real,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He's got some real presence where you're like, this guy's suave, but I get the sense I shouldn't mess with him. And I think as a
Mm-hmm.
result, Bratt actually plays the role of Leia's surrogate father better than
Yeah.
Smith. But again, I think he has a better writer. He has a better writer to kind of help him do that. So,
What are your thoughts on Tony Gilroy says something very interesting because we've had our discussions about Kathleen Kennedy and stuff, and he said I couldn't have done this without her.
Well, I mean, I think that's technically true. I mean, I think he has to be good. I mean, he's got to be a little good soldier. I mean, that's who's writing the checks here.
Yeah,
But no, I think he's telling the truth in the sense of this all starts with Rogue One. They gave the money for Rogue One. They gave the money to fix it because it was a difficult production. And when this conversation was had about doing this show, as we all know, he wasn't very interested in coming back to do it. But basically was like, if I did it, this is what I would need. And she said, okay. And by all accounts, if there is a thorn in the side of this show becoming a template, it is how expensive it was. I mean, this show, by all accounts, is as expensive as it looks. I mean, there's rumors that this season costs $450-500 million to make. It looks it. It's like 4 movies, as we've said. It's a quadrilogy. So if you're like, hey, it's actually not that bad. If you say it's 4 3-hour movies, get
$100 million each.
I'm like, that's not bad. That's not bad. But all in for a TV show, that's a lot.
They should really consider releasing this in the theaters and at least
just do it on May the 4th.
Huh?
Do it on May the 4th next year.
Yeah. Release 1 movie a week.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Filoni thing, it's an interesting evolution. And why I bring up cost. There's no question that at every point in this show, the physical detail of real sets and real vehicles and real weapons makes the difference.
Yeah.
This show has more of the magic, I think, of the original Star Wars than almost anything else Star Wars that I've seen for that reason, right? When you watch New Hope, part of the beauty of New Hope, especially the pre-special edition, if you can find it, the original version, is that you know that it's all there. Like, it's just models and puppets and props. And you're just like, how is this possible? It's that it looks so good. This show has a lot of that.
Yeah.
I realize that given the money it costs to make that possible, you can't just do that willy-nilly with everything you do. But it is definitely one of those, like, having the volume is nice, but you need to be really careful about how you use it. And I think we went from when it was introduced in The Mandalorian saying, wow, this is like revolutionary and increases efficiency, to being like, wow, there's a law of diminishing marginal returns. And that looks really shoddy if you use it that much.
Yeah.
So there is this medium, I think, for these Jedi-oriented or Force-oriented shows where you've got to be like, you got to get out in the real world a little bit. Like, you got to look at what they did with Coruscant. And when you go to some other planet, find something in the real world that gives you a basis to build a set that looks as cool as that, and then use the volume to save some money where it's not
appropriate.
Yeah. But there's no question that, like, the practicality of this show, like when you go back and rewatch like some of the stuff in The Fighter and some of where you realize like there's a actual something rigged up, like a drone or something that's moving to create that effect, and then they're drawing the CGI around it. I'm like, it's just so different than like, hey, we're just going to draw everything and
yeah.
on screen. Yeah.
What else, Brian?
I am curious to see. So, okay, so you mentioned, let's do this at this point. I asked this question about, like, if you had only one award, one category, now that we're at the end of the season. And I'm going to say, let's bring in season 1 and 2. So you get the whole show, 24 episodes. You get to give 1 Emmy in 1 category. I'll say to a performer. So let's take the show out, because I think we probably would say the show itself would get the. So for an individual performer in an individual category, who's getting the 1 award off this show?
I would. So let's list off some of the.
So it'd be like Diego Luna would be in the lead actor category. Everyone else would probably be supporting. So then it would be like Luthen. So Stellan Skarsgård, Genevieve O'Reilly, Denise Goff,
I
Kyle
would say
Solar,
I would
Adria
even say
Arjona.
yeah.
I mean, those would be some of your main candidate, or Elizabeth Dulau. Those would be some of your main candidates for the supporting category. Who's getting the one award?
For Maine,
Yeah.
you say Luthen is supporting?
Yeah, I think he technically. I think only I think only Diego Luna would be in a lead category, technically, if they were nominating. But it's fine. You can do whatever you want. I mean,
Diego Luna had to be a chameleon in this.
it's a great word.
Because he had to be the soldier. He had to be the guy playing all these other individuals. It was I still remember this scene where he puts on a thing and they're telling him you're this, you're that, you're this, you come from this and stuff like that. And this is his the dossier of someone who he has to be, and he becomes that person. I think Deidre, in that moment that she breaks, her hand is shaking. She's fixing her uniform, trying to get back into character, and realizing how difficult it is to do that, and just seeing her go through that transition. And I think I would give it to her.
It's very interesting you say that. I think that's the right answer, actually. I think if you look at the totality of the 2 seasons, and we're talking about the best performance start to finish, I think it's actually her. Because I actually think in some ways it's the hardest. I think it's the hardest one to do and have and balance humanity with evil, to balance imperial sort of proper, automaton with making the character have depth, and then this idea of, like I said, of individualizing the empire. I think Denise Goff is the right answer. I think at the end of season 1 I would have said Skarsgård. I don't think he has quite as much to do in season 2. Season 2, he's more of like you feel his fingerprints. He gets a couple of very key moments. Obviously, his send-off moment is a real great capper to a great character. But I think Goff actually overtakes him by the end of the season, especially the way her storyline wraps, where you see her ambition come crashing down. I think she's the right answer. Diego Luna would probably be my answer for who's the most essential character. Yeah, it's still him, because the show doesn't work unless he's passing the ball and unless he's connecting all of these storylines together. And I actually think he has a much more prominent season 2 than season 1. I love seeing him in costume and leadership, the things he has to do on missions individually. You definitely see why Cassian Andor is like a mechanic for the rebellion. Like he's a dude. Like you get to see that. And I think in that sense, you're kind of like, it's a weirdly different role, right? Like I said, he's most essential versus like outright best.
His decision making, although sometimes he has to be talked back into going back out there, because there are moments where he's like, I'm done. And then someone says to him things that sort of make him think twice about it. But in those moments where he's on a mission or he's in the rebellion, he is absolute in his decisions. And this is like, look at Mon Mothma when she's escaping with him. You killed it. Like, yeah, there's no hesitation when he has to get rid of somebody. No hesitation. And we see that from the beginning in Rogue One.
And that's why I actually think that's why we talk about him as being essential, because he's kind of, I think that's how they describe Agent Smith in The Matrix. They're like, he's everywhere and he is nowhere. Like, if you think about throughout this show, one of the ways Cassian is used, he's the character who physically comes into contact with the most other characters, right? He shares scenes with Mon Mothma. He shares scenes with Luthen. He shares scenes with these people on the missions.
Mm-hmm.
he, in a weird way, as he says at the end, I know Luthen, the good and the bad. He can kind of say that about almost everyone.
Yeah.
And no one else can. Everyone else has an indirect go-between. And a lot of times the
Yeah.
go-between is him. And so in a weird way, that's what I mean. He is the most essential. So like that Mon Mothma rescue, I think we're left with, that is part of what converts Mon Mothma from diplomat to true rebel, right? Because she sees what is necessary. She sees the thing that Luthen has told her about up close. And then Cassian says, make it worth it. And that is meant to tell you, like, that's the moment when Mon Mothma pivots. And then you see like her arranged marriage, right? Her husband's with some other woman back on Coruscant living his cushy life. And she's on the base in Yavin being like, help me believe. And we're going to set this in motion and go try to blow this thing up.
What did Luthen say to her when Mon Mothma said to him, she says something to him where he says, how nice for you.
Right. Yes.
That, you know, because at that point, Luthen is like, yo, he got to go. That's it. Right. Yeah. With anybody. He doesn't care. He doesn't, there's no, other than perhaps Clea, baby. But he knows that Clea is a soldier because he's known her for so long. But anybody else, if you got to go, you got to go. That's it.
Which, by the way, so two little things in Rogue One that, like, after the show was over, I was like, oh, I saw a cut up on YouTube, which took the Cassian's walk to the ship right into his arrival on Kafrene. It put it as one scene so you could see it. Like, and like, if you remember, he meets that guy who we hear referenced in the show who will only meet with him. And what does he do? They get the information. He gets the information. They get accosted by the stormtroopers. Cassian draws on the stormtroopers and kills them. And then what does he do? He kills the dude.
Yeah.
And you're like, when you see that, you're like, that came from Luthen, right? That's the through line of that, where he's like, he understood in the moment he couldn't let this guy leave that scene once he got the information.
Yeah.
The second thing, which blew my mind, and I didn't even realize it, someone cut up the end of Rogue One with the Cassian Cyril Karn fight. When Jyn Erso is up on that radar tower at the end of Rogue One, and she and Krennic come face to face for the first time, you remember what he says to her?
Who, Krennic?
Yeah. Krennic's holding the blaster at her. She's standing on the radar tower, and he's just staring at her, and he asks her a question.
I don't remember.
Who are you?
Ah, yes.
The same question that Cassian asked Cyril at the end.
Yeah.
And it's a complete reversal, right? Because it's the good guy in Andor saying, who are you attacking me like this? And there's Krennic with his baby Death Star about to be made vulnerable by this anonymous, but ultimately, obviously, daughter of someone he does know, where he's like, who are you? Like, to go to this length, to get to this place, like, who are they thought of everything, man. Everything is tied off. Everything is tied together.
And beautifully done. Excellently done. Again, the details.
The editing. I mean, to do this, I'm looking forward to watching individual pieces of this. One thing I really like about season 2 versus 1 is how it was broken up. It allows you to jump back in and say, I want to watch this sequence, right? This set of 3. I don't have to watch all 12 in order. I can go back but this show is edited perfectly. These episodes are ordered perfectly for these little windows into these individual years, which is really hard. Like, how do you cover a year in 3 hours and make it feel like what they showed you mattered and what they didn't show you could figure out? It's a master.
That's why I was so excited to see every week, like, how does this year begin?
But then in the dialogue, you get little things filled in. You get kind of like, hey, we missed this. Something happened in this year that like changed things, right? Like Val and Cinta, this stuff that happened, we don't see, but it's referenced. It's important. And the show knows that, like, yeah, we can trust you. We don't have to show it to you. Because someone asked Gilroy about the baby and said, did Bix know when she left? Because if you're thinking about the timing, right, people were like, okay, so it's a year apart. She leaves. the baby's probably a couple months old. So that would be like technically on the line. Was she pregnant on the night she leaves? And he says, yes. He says, Bix is pregnant, and you should read it as she knows she's pregnant. And it's a part of the motivation as to why she's choosing the rebellion, but also choosing kind of a better and safer future. He's like, you absolutely should read it that way, that she is
And she's
aware of what
choosing the rebellion, meaning she's choosing for Andor to lead it, not for her to be involved, but to lead it because of her staying. Because you see him, I'm done. I want to be with you, and and her. Yeah, even my wife said, "Oh, she's gonna leave him." when he was because of her reaction, not saying anything, the way they hugged, and you see her face is like right there. She knew what she was gonna do.
But then I think it's also right. So what Gilroy is saying is, we've seen Bix be in this mode of indecision and trauma. But I think the point of the baby is kind of like that's what tips the scales, right? It's like
Yeah,
she's like, I know he won't be able to do what he's supposed to do. He's like, I already not sure if he can do it because of me. He definitely won't be able to
definitely.
do it if he's got a kid.
Yeah. It's like, what did you get a sense of like, damn, it's over?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a bittersweet, right? It's part of what makes the show great is that it has this defined beginning and this defined ending. But the fact that it is done and we won't get to really break down more episodes is a shame.
Yeah.
I think it will only grow in stature. I mean, I think about the pantheon of shows that I talk about in my life that I've seen and that have grown. Like this will be in that conversation. Like, if we're blessed enough to be doing this show, 10, 20 years from now, we're still going to reference this show.
This is top tier, the bar for a story. Forget about TV. There's plenty of TV shows that are top tier, have set a high bar, but this stands alone in the way they delivered this story. And for people not to get that is crazy to me, but whatever. Uh,
I think that will change. I think that will change over time. I
yeah.
do. I think whether 40, 50 years from now, this show will be its own marvel alongside of, New Hope. Like it'll be like the original trilogy, and then it'll be this and Rogue One will be like something viewed as the best of Star Wars canon. I think it will grow over time.
Final thoughts, Brian.
I mean, 5 stars almost doesn't feel like enough. I mean, this is the most see. It's when something comes along like this and you give it a 5. That's what always will be the check and balance of anything else you want to give a 5 to, because you're like,
Yeah.
this is a 5. Is that really a 5? I get it. There's like the 5. This is like the 5 plus, right? This is like beyond 5. But I mean, if there is such a thing as a perfect show, I think this thing got as close as you could get.
Yeah. This is the show that you recommend for people who, because I know people who won't watch it because it's Star Wars. Oh, it's Star Wars. I'm not into Star Wars. I was like, this is more than just that.
I think it's
This
a
is
great
way
entry
more.
point for someone who's not into Star Wars.
Exactly.
In
Yes.
some ways, you could argue it is a better way in because it doesn't throw so much of the Force stuff at you. There's a little bit of it, but not much.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of it, and I think people who aren't familiar with Star Wars and the Force and all that stuff won't notice.
Yeah.
And you can, right after this, show them Rogue One. I think I think you can convert people who aren't into Star Wars. And I think you probably lose them for the prequels. You'll lose them probably there. But this right here is something that you can certainly put people onto, and they will thank you for it later.
Well, so that, I think the pitch to bringing people into this is more, did you enjoy Shogun? Did you enjoy Breaking Bad? Did you enjoy The Sopranos? Did you enjoy The Wire? Because like all those shows are radically different genres and shows, but I think we can all, I mean, find me someone who thinks that any of them is bad, right? They're all great watches of television. That's the pitch for this show. Did you like those shows? You will enjoy this show.
Absolutely, 100%.
I think the question is, and it's an interesting question, if you can find people who have never seen anything Star Wars ever, they just have heard the name, they don't know anything. If you show them this in Rogue One first, will it hurt their experience for New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi in particular? Because they will then think Star Wars is supposed to be only what Tony Gilroy shows them, and they're going to be like, what's going on in this cantina? Like, why are these like colorful swords waving around? Like, where's the I just wonder. I don't think so. I think those movies are great no matter what, but like I do wonder if I could brainwash myself and say this is the very first Star Wars I ever touched, and therefore I thought this is the Star Wars universe, and then I saw Lucas's admittedly aimed at younger audiences version of it. Would I think of it differently than I do? Like I can love both, but
yeah. Has George Lucas spoken about what Tony Gilroy has done with this?
No, I think he has stopped opining on all things Star Wars at this point ever since the last trilogy. So, but no,
be interesting to hear what he has to say about this. But yeah, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think, what you guys thought of the Andor show, season 2, season 1 in its totality.
Yeah.
Tell
your friends, if you have socials, push for a theatrical mini release next May 4th or some other time, because I think this season more so than the first would be fun to watch.
Yeah.
In pieces in a theater.
Yeah, because that's not how they did it the first season. Correct?
No, the first season is more. It is in like
traditional.
Units, but it has like there's a couple of actual individual episodes. It's structured differently. So yeah, this season is much more for the theaters.
Yeah.
So
yeah, let us know in the comment section below. Hit that like and subscribe. Share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time on the NerdGen Report.